So this video is about the personal project and how to write the report so you get maximum marks. Now it's important that you write a good report if you want to get a high score for this. In fact, you could have a terrible project, but if you've got a good report, you're still going to get a good mark. So this video, I'm just going to go through step by step what to write and how to present your report, your written report. So it can be considered like a checklist of things to do. The video could also be considered how to write your report in a weekend if you've run out of time, if you've procrastinated. So if you go through these points, you'll be able to maximize your marks. Now this video is about efficiency of time and effort. So all the tips I'm giving you link directly to the assessment criteria. So if the assessment criteria asks for this, I'm going to tell you to write this as well. So it directly links. So whoever's reading your report, whoever's assessing, it will be really easy for them to give you marks, give you maximum marks. So the whole thing for your report writing here is to have the assessor in mind, to make it easy for the assessor to give you maximum marks. Okay, so we'll start with Criterion A, and there's 3 strands with Criterion A. So the first strand, strand 1, says define a clear and highly challenging goal and global context for the project based on personal interest. So here's what to write in your report. So if you can remember back to your MYP design class, you've probably written a design brief. So your design brief is basically a goal, a clear goal. I will make a whatever, I will build a whatever, and I will use whatever materials, and these are the reasons why I'm building it, and this is the person I'm building it for or making it for. So just be very clear about what you're actually going to make. What materials are you going to use? Are you going to create a video? Are you going to play a concert? Are you going to build a website? Are you going to, whatever it might be, but just be very clear and specific about it, because later on you're going to measure your project against the goal, so it's imperative that they match. Next thing it says, talks about, my tip is to explain what skills you actually have now. So if you want to do a project with photography, you want to clearly establish that these are my photography skills right now. And this project is going to be a challenge for me because I'm going to incorporate higher skills, higher learning. So there needs to be a shift from whatever skill level you're at, and this is going to stretch your skills and challenge you. The other thing is you'll need to identify a global context. So pick a global context and link it to your personal project. So easiest way to do this is identify a global context, explain in a sentence or two what that global context is, and then link that global context in another sentence directly to your project. So a paragraph about the global context. And then the other one is identifying a clear topic or focus. So if you're really interested in the environment, if you're really interested in pottery, whatever the subject is, you need to discuss how you're interested in this. So you need to convince the reader that, yeah, I'm very interested in this topic. This has been always interesting to me since I was a kid, or my uncle works here, or my aunt does this. So give the reader a reason why you're actually interested in this topic, this subject area. So that is Criterion A, Strand 1. So for Strand 2, it talks about identifying prior learning and subject-specific knowledge. So here again, you want to establish a benchmark. This is where I am now, because later on the project, in particular for Criterion D, you're going to measure, you want to clearly measure that you've had some growth, some increase in your knowledge. So here is where you say, I know about these topics. This is my level where I'm at right now. And make your level somewhere where you've got room for it to grow as well. So just establish a clear level. You'll also, you can also link this to some of your classes. Now it can be your class subject, for example, art class or PE class, or it can be, or it could be a class outside of school. So for example, if you take piano lessons and you have done for 4 years, you mention about your level in piano class and what level you're exactly at, because later on, again, it needs to be a clear measure of growth, whether it's skills and knowledge. So this is about setting the standards where you're at now, a snapshot of where you are now. Okay, so relevant to the project. Okay, so next one is Strand A, Criterion A Strand 3. You need to demonstrate excellent research skills. Now, the easiest way to do this, step one, go to Google and type in research skills. And what happens when you type in research skills, you'll identify a whole bunch of different skills. Just pick out a couple. Pick out a couple of research skills and then explain the skill and then link it to evidence that you have demonstrated this actual skill. Now, the next thing is, if you could find a research model. Now, I think schools love, teachers love, librarians love giving you research tools. For example, things like OPDL, MISO, the Big Six, CRAP, CLASS, these kind of models. So you say, I used this model. Here's some evidence of me using this model. And then you've got to tell the examiner that I use the model and it's really, really good. It's really helpful. I've used it well and it's helped my project as well. So there's clear evidence of use of the research tool and that it's actually been of benefit to you. Another way to get top marks here is in this report that you're writing, make sure you've got a long bibliography. So however you can fill that bibliography, so if you write a paragraph, find some kind of a reference that you could link to it. And that's evidence that you've done research. Now, the other thing is we need a range of research sources. So things like you've read a book, you did some observation, you did some interviews, you talked to a professional in the field. So you need primary and secondary research. So a nice variety of sources of information. So in this report, there's got to be the citations. Fill this report with citations because that's clear evidence that you've got research skills. So next one, moving on to Criterion B. Criterion B, Strand 1, developing rigorous criteria for the product. Okay, assessment criteria or design specifications. So that's a list of something like 8 different things, 8 to 10 different requirements. Talk about the size, talk about the materials that you've used, talk about length. If you're making, say, for example, a video, it's going to go for this amount of time, be quite specific. If you're really specific here, it's easy to measure, it's easy to score. So if you're going to write a book, you're going to say the book will be 10 to 20 pages long. That's easy to measure. Now, for you to get top marks here, you need to justify why 10 to 20 is the right amount. And this is where you link it to research. So your goal can be the book I'm going to write will be 10 to 20 pages long. And that is because the reader, according to research, wherever you've researched, kids aged 5 to 10 like this length of book. Then it's very clear that you've got a measure and you've got a reasoning or justification behind the measure. Now, to make sure you get top marks for this, you can also talk about how it's going to be tested. So if you're building a chair, the chair will be built for an adult and I'm going to test it by getting 10 different adults to sit on it for an hour or two. And they're going to make some comments about the comfort and whether it's the support and strength. So talk about how you're actually going to test it, when you're going to test it, who's going to test it as well, and then you'll get top marks for this section. Okay, for Strand B, Criterion B Strand 2, you need to present a detailed and accurate plans. Now, this is your plan for your project, not the report, but the actual project. What are you building? What are you making? What are you creating? And you need to do like a step-by-step plan. If you imagine building some Lego, that's a step-by-step plan, piece by piece. So it needs to be clear enough. It's easy to fall into the trap that when you write a plan, you're writing it for yourself. But you're writing a plan for somebody else to read. So it must be clear and understandable for a third party that they can read your plan and actually imagine if they were actually following your plan and doing the project for you. That's the kind of communication style you need. Now, all good plans have like a step-by-step guide. They have reference to time. So when are you going to do each task? Now, they also, not only when, but actually how long it's going to take. Will it take 2 hours? Will it take 5 hours? Will this section take 1.5 hours? Whatever it might be. So a clear reference to time, dates, and actual duration as well. The other thing is that, so you're going to mention the task. This is the task I'm going to do. it's going to be done on this date and it's going to take this long, and these are the materials, these are the people that will be involved. Now, to get top marks for this, you can create a plan, but you also need reference to how the plan actually unfolded. So often we make a plan and it never works perfectly. So that's reality. So you need to talk about how your plan had to change along the way, and you had to change this date, you had to extra time here, you got sick that day so you couldn't do that task. So here's your plan, and here's some notes about reality of what actually unfolded. That's how you get top marks. Okay, for Criterion B Strand 3, it talks about demonstrating excellent self-management skills. Now, the easiest way to get top marks here is go to Google and type in self-management skills. Find a list with some examples and definitions, and then take a few of them. Find a couple that you can prove that you did. So here's a skill, here's a self-management skill, time management. Here is evidence that I am really good at time management. And then also, to get top marks here, you can say, and this impacted my project really well in this way. So what is the actual skill, evidence that you used it, and how it has a positive impact on your project or on you as a person. That's how you get top marks here. So don't just talk about vague self-management skills, identify actual skills, and then it'll be easy to write and easy for your assessor to give you top marks. Next thing, Criterion C, moving on to Criterion C in Strand 1. This talks about creating a product. So first of all, what is your product? What is your outcome? You need to share it. So in your report, you need a link or photos or an appendix or whatever. This is what I built. Also, for top marks, it needs to be in response to your goal, global context, and criteria. So tell me what your original goal was. Tell the assessor, this was my original goal and this is what I make. Tell the assessor that it matches nicely. This was the goal and this is what I make. Or if it doesn't match, just explain why. This was my original goal, but I've gone beyond that goal, or I didn't quite achieve that goal, I had to adjust it slightly. But it needs to be a clear link between your original goal and your outcome. That needs to be explained in a paragraph. And then the next section for top marks here, this is where you revisit your assessment criteria for B1. So in B1, you made a big list of different assessment criteria. This is where you can put your assessment criteria, and it can be like a checklist, pass or fail, or a rating out of 5, whatever it might be, because there needs to be a clear link between your product and the assessment criteria and ratings for all of them. So that can be a table or a scorecard, whatever's easiest for you. And then the last bit is I need a paragraph about global context, the IB. Love the global context. The easiest way to address the global context section is identify the global context in a paragraph, then add a sentence or two explaining the global context, and then another couple of sentences explaining how the global context and your product, your outcome, are a match, how they are in sync, how the global context and your product are in harmony, that kind of a thing. That's how you're going to get top marks for this strand. Criteria C Strand 2 is demonstrating thinking skill. Okay, we're revisiting this same technique. Go to Google, type in thinking skills, find some specific thinking skills, explain the thinking skills with a definition, with a reference as well. This proves that you're doing some good research. And then provide evidence that you demonstrated this thinking skill and that this thinking skill had a positive impact on your project. Then find another thinking skill. Explain the thinking skill. Provide evidence that you demonstrated this thinking skill and how it had a positive impact on your project or you as a student. So be specific here, don't be vague. Be very specific about research, thinking skills, and your assessor it'll be easy for them to give you top marks for this section. Now, the exact same technique for Strand 2, you're going to use for Strand 3. So here at Strand 3, it says demonstrate communication and social skills. Type in social skills, type in communication skills, type in interpersonal skills, type in these kind of terms and find specific skills. So once you find a social skill, for example, empathy. What is empathy? Explain empathy, research, reference it. Now then provide evidence that you demonstrated this specific skill and how it had a positive impact on your project or you as a person. So again, don't be vague, be very specific. This is the skill, this is explaining what the skill is, here's evidence of me using it, and it had a positive impact on my project and me as a student, as a learner. Okay, next and the final Criterion D. So Criterion D Strand 1 is evaluate the quality of the product success against your assessment criteria. Okay, in B1 and C1, you've got your assessment criteria. So you've got your specific assessment criteria. In C1 is where you have your product and your assessment criteria, and that's where you've got your pass or fail or rating out of 5. In this section here, which is Strand 1 for Criterion D, you need to evaluate it a little bit more, pull it apart. So it's one thing to test your product. So in B1, here is the test, here are the assessment criteria. In C1, you actually do this test. In D1, this is where you evaluate the data. So this is where you say, okay, here's a presentation of all the scores and all the feedback about people who saw my product, saw my project, or tested my project, and then you analyze it. Okay, I scored 5 out of 5 for this assessment criteria because blah, blah, blah. This is you now evaluating. I scored only 1 out of 5 for this section, and it's because blah, 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 blah. Again, you're now evaluating. Now, another easy way and simple way that you could evaluate your product is write a paragraph about how you could make your product better. So if you had an extra month or 2 months or more resources or more skills, how could you improve your project so it would better meet your goal, your original goal? That's an easy way to evaluate your product, and the assessor can give you top marks. Okay, Criterion D Strand 2. Reflect on how completing the project have extended your knowledge. Okay, back in A2, you created like a snapshot of you as a learner, where you're exactly at as a learner. Now this is your chance to talk about your growth as a learner. So because of the project, my knowledge base has increased, my understanding has increased, my skills have increased. So you talk about all the growth and skill increase and knowledge increase that's occurred because of the project. Because of this project, I now know more about this topic and this topic and this topic. Because of the project, these skills have increased. So whoever's assessing you want to see that this project had a positive impact on your growth, your skills and your level of understanding. Now, you must have a paragraph here about the global context once again. So this is a concluding paragraph about the global context. So the easiest way to write this, once again, identify your global context, explain what the global context is in a sentence or two, and then talk about how you now understand this global context a lot more because of the project, how this global context has impacted you as a person, or how it has impacted other people. So this should, right now, this point in the project, you should be explaining how much more you understand the global context and how it's impacted you and the people around you. And the last one, Criterion D Strand 3, is reflecting on development as an IB learner. Okay, so this is the final section and this is your reflection. Easiest way to do this, find the learner profile attributes. IB learner profile attributes, pick out a couple of them and talk about how you have become, so one could be thinker, how you have demonstrated that you're a thinker because of this project. So if you could attach a learner profile attribute to yourself and how this has increased as a result of the project, that would be an easy way to demonstrate this and meet this final strand's requirements. The other way you can do this is by focusing on the ATL skills. So talk about some learner profile attributes, then talk about some ATL skills. So specify an ATL skill and talk about how this has increased or you have improved this as a result of your project. So, and then the third section, which will be a concluding statement. What the assessor would love to hear is about just how much you've grown because of the project, how much you've enjoyed the project, how much a better student you are because of the project. So final section, learner profile things, ATL things, and just a concluding statement about how this project has made you a better student and it's made the world a better place.